If you've clicked on this video, you clearly want to understand what on earth all these names mean when we're searching for jobs in data biology world. What is the difference between bioinformatician, genomic data scientist, computational biologist, just to name a few? If you get confused by all this terminology, stay tuned to find out what it all means on today's video. Hi, my name's Georgia. This is Genomics with Georgia. I am a genomic data scientist, or bioinformatician, computational biologist, we'll figure out later, working in Cambridge in the UK. I make content all about how to transition from the wet lab into the dry lab, because data world is great. Let's get into today's video. If you're trying to find a job in the biology data world, the first thing you need to do when finding that job is to actually find the job advert. Some people tell me that they struggle to find these positions on job websites like LinkedIn, Indeed, etc., Google Jobs, whatever. But you need to know the right words to be searching for in order to find these positions. And there are a bunch of different names for all of these roles, some of which are very confusing, some of which are inconsistent. But today's video is going to break down a lot of these job names, what they mean, and then it can help you navigate your job hunt to find a job in data biology. So first things first, I am a genomic data scientist by job title. So let's look at this one to begin with. First of all, we're going to split it down from data scientist and data analyst. Now these roles sound, these roles sound very similar, but let's work through the differences. Data analyst is a job role where you're going to be analyzing data, obviously. But data analysts normally work with pre-existing data, and they make sense of that pre-existing data and they tell stories from it. They create reports from that data, they can create dashboards from that data, but data analytics is essentially working with created data already and using tools to bring it to life, to analyze that data. Things like descriptive statistics, things like plotting graphs, basically summarizing and interpreting data that exists. Then if we think about data science is more to do with creating ways of making new data, creating hypotheses and interpretations to then test and manipulate data. Data science is more about modeling and forecasting what we've got from initial data and generating new data from that. These worlds can collide, and I'd invite you to go and have a look at a bunch of other videos on YouTube that have great longer descriptions about the difference. But in a nutshell, data analysis, working with pre-existing data to extrapolate and summarize information to inform people. And then data science is more about creating new ways to analyze data, forecasting, predictive modeling, hypothesis-driven work. But the problem is, sometimes roles will be interchangeably called scientist or analyst, just depending on the company. So I'd advise for you to search both of these terms, because you can find roles that are called a data scientist, but actually the job description is a little bit more on the analytical side. Data science jobs and data analyst jobs exist in the biology world without the prefix of genomic or biology in front of that. So you can still find these entry-level roles on your job hunt simply by searching data scientist or data analyst, but they will be at companies working with biological data, working with healthcare data. So a really important thing that I found in my job hunt journey is to make sure if you have a LinkedIn profile that has all of your biological information, well, not your biological information, but it has information on it that is your biological history. No, this doesn't work. If your LinkedIn has information regarding your past credentials relating to biology, there we go. The algorithm will kind of fine-tune the jobs it suggests to you based on that. So even if you search for data scientist, data analyst, it comes up with roles in specific healthcare companies. So you're still working in the biology data world. The job title just doesn't have that prefix on it. So really key to still search for data science, data analyst roles, even without that prefix at the front. So say for example, I head on over to my laptop. If I type in data scientist into my search on my LinkedIn jobs, let's see what comes up. My internet is so slow. So if I search data scientist, we have a bunch of roles coming up. Some of them aren't healthcare based. We've got one at Monzo, but statistician at NHS blood transplant, senior genomic surveillance data scientist at the Sanger Institute, obviously sciencey. What else do we have? Data scientist at Cambridge Epigenetics, data scientist, Institute of Cancer Research, data scientist, Cambridge Epigenetics. Essentially, because my profile is biology genomics related, even when I search data scientist roles, it provides me ones at companies working with biological data, which is fantastic. So let's change it over to Analyst. So again, I've got another one at Cambridge Epigenetics working with genomics data. Data Analyst at MedPace, again, working with health informatic data. What else do we have? Well, lots of banking ones, which obviously not for us. Research Data Scientist at University of Sheffield. You get the idea. So you can search for these roles without the prefix. And if you've got a page tailored to biology, then you're going to find these roles anyway. All right, guys, the next thing we are going to debunk is the prefix. So like I said, we have jobs that are data science, data analyst, both of which you should take a look at. But what are these prefixes at the beginning? So I am a genomic data scientist. So what does that mean? So genomic data, what do we mean by that? We mean we have biological organisms that obviously have their own DNA sequence. So I'm working with data created from that DNA sequence. So essentially, the sequencing reads when we sequence that organism's genome, that's the data I work with. So whether that's like right at the beginning, those raw BCL files from the Illumina machine, whether that's the FASTQ files, which is the actual reads that have been sequenced, whether that's the BAM files, when those reads have been aligned to a genome, or whether that's VCF files, variant call format files, looking at the different variants in that data compared to the reference sequence. So that's the kind of data types I work with as a genomic data scientist, because I'm working with the genome data. But the thing is, genomics can mean a bunch of things. In my case, it means the genome data, but there's the whole world of omics, right? And you can find roles that say data scientist brackets omics. So what do we mean by omics? So omics is an umbrella term when we're talking about things like the central dogma in biology. We're thinking about all the data that comes from the genetic code to the protein. So we have genomic data, which is the sequence reads from the genome. Then we have transcriptomic data, which is the transcript data, which is sequence reads from the transcripts, so RNA. Then we have proteomics, which is data on the proteins. So omics kind of encapsulates all of those different segments, because it's not just genetic variation that can cause disease. We've got a whole pathway. So from the genome, transcribed into the RNA for the transcripts, and then translated into the protein, amino acids for the protein. So there's a lot of data there to be handling. So sometimes you'll have different prefixes on those job titles to indicate what data that specific role is going to be working with. Now moving on to my favorite word, bioinformatician. What do we mean by bioinformatician? So here's my take on it, and it's just my take. Feel free to challenge me in the comments of this video. I think bioinformatician is traditionally in academia an umbrella term for kind of anybody that's dealing with biological data. So when I say biological data, I'm not just talking about the sequence reads that we get from either DNA or RNA. I'm talking about other types of biological data too. So whether that's image data, whether that's methylation data, other data types have we got? Basically working with any type of biological data. It's an umbrella term in academia. So you could kind of have an umbrella bioinformatician, and you could be a genomic data scientist within that. You could be working on RNA within that. You could be working on image analysis within that. So bioinformatics is an umbrella term that can cover working with any type of biological data. Bioinformatics, biology, computers. That's what that is. But however, it's really important to note that from my experience having a little look at jobs, I've seen that kind of in industry or more operational academic research institutes, you'll find there are different types of bioinformatician. So when we think about bioinformatician in more industry settings, so this is kind of more private companies or maybe public companies that are like generating operations, we have multiple types of bioinformatician. So in industry, these are more to do with processing sequence data usually. So when dealing with sequence data, we've got a variety of things in the pipeline, right? You've got from right when that organism is sequenced, you've then got the processing of that data, so all things to do with aligning and variant calling, and you've got all the downstream analyses, so answering those scientific questions you're interested in, so maybe looking at population structure, looking at rare variants. So if we take a look at my LinkedIn and I search for bioinformatician, let's see what comes up here. So loads and loads of jobs, all in private and academic places. So we've got bioinformatics scientist, you can append that on the end, senior bioinformatician, clinical bioinformatician, bioinformatician brackets omics, we know what we mean by omics, bioinformatician, consultant bioinformatician, bioinformatician dash proteomics, so that one would be working with the proteomic data. Bioinformaticians can come under lots of umbrella terms, whether they define what data type they're working with, or where in that pipeline they sit. So like we saw, we had a machine learning bioinformatician that would be working on creating machine learning models to process the data. You can have more pipeline bioinformaticians that are actually building the machinery to process the data. Or you can have more analytical bioinformaticians that are analyzing the outputs of what comes out of those pipelines. So yeah, bioinformatics, massive umbrella term, and then within that you either have where they sit in that kind of analysis pipeline from sequence read, building pipelines, analyzing data. So yeah, bioinformatician is a great word to search, but be careful about what it means because it can mean many different things. All right, so next let's have a look at computational biologist. So is this not just bioinformatician but like switched around, computational biologist? Essentially, maybe, but what I found is computational biologist is more specifying non-sequence work. So bioinformaticians are usually working with our omics data. It can be image analysis and other types, but usually it's omics data. Whereas computational biologist is more to do with the other biological data that we can handle in biology. So let's take a look at some of these job descriptions. So here we go, we've got one at the Sanger, computational biologist. So what are they looking for in this one? So their computational biologist is going to drive analysis and interpret large-scale multimodal data. So in this case, they've called it a biologist because it's encapsulating multimodal data. So what this means is essentially all of those data types that we've been talking about, which is fantastic. They're validating predictions and hypotheses, they're interpreting data. So what this biologist one here is like an umbrella term for all of those multimodal different types of data and analysis, from building the analysis to interpreting it to testing hypotheses. So a very generalist scientist role here. So essentially, computational biologist is summarizing all of that, and it's non-specific to the data you'll be working with and usually multimodal. So there might be some other terms you'll come across, things like data engineer, pipeline engineer, biostatistician, etc. But I think the key take home, has it gone really dark in here? It has, great. The key take home from today is the fact that there are a multiple array of different names for these roles. But what you really need to do is search for them all, read those job descriptions and see if that is tailored to the skill set that you have or you're trying to get. So thank you guys for joining me on another video with Genomics with, or Bioinformatics with Georgia. Yeah, I hope this has been a little bit helpful in debugging the differences between all of these job titles that get super confusing. Feel free to Put in the comments if you'd like me to expand on any more of these jobs in particular. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if this has been helpful, and I'll see you on the next video.